I got my first recommendation the other day. The Story of Onfim, a Medieval Child by Trey the Explainer.
Hello there guys, and welcome to another installment of Trey the Explainer. The way human history is often taught in classrooms nowadays can seem kind of boring, in my opinion. Centuries of history are boiled down to socio-economic trends and major
Pause
cultural
real quick to have my own take on history taught in the classroom. I wasn't really taught history when I was in school because of an IEP that I had where I don't know why. I don't know why there's not a special ed version of history class, I guess, but I just flat out wasn't taught history. There are a lot of things that I should have been taught, but I did not learn. And even before I had an IEP, I just didn't have good history teachers. Every history teacher I had felt like they were overly strict on things that weren't related to history. And I got quite a few stories of me really trying my best in some of those classes, and my teachers just tearing me down because they don't think I was trying. And I do not hate history, but I tend to not have good memories of the few history classes I had before I got removed from all history classes in my education. I think it's really weird that I wasn't taught much. That's kind of all I have to say. I was barely taught anything. I don't know how to explain how hard I really did try in some of those classes when I did have a history section of class. But I would really try, but it felt like, again, every history teacher I had, specifically in middle school, because that was the only time I did learn a little bit of history, all of my history teachers in middle school were so hard for what felt like no reason. Especially on me, like I had a teacher that actually made me cry because of a paper I wrote that I spent about a week writing it, and they were treating me like I spent 5 minutes on it because I have a very poor writing skill. And I guess they thought that it was some sort of joke how badly it was written, even though I didn't think it was that bad. But they made sure to teach me a lesson in front of the class, I guess, by bashing how bad it was and how, I did not try on this paper and whatnot, and it actually just made me never want to attempt writing a paper of the sort ever again, because I'm aware that I have a very bad writing skill, and it felt like that's why I had a bad time in my history classes, because they would treat me like I'm intentionally bad at writing. Anyways, that's enough from me. I'm gonna keep playing the video.
shifts. Don't get me wrong, this perspective is important, but I think it removes the humanity of history. Past peoples become these shapeless and faceless blobs that we never really get to meet or understand. They lack any kind of agency or individuality. Modern audiences can walk away with the idea that people in the past were simple, brutish, and far too different to be like us. But that's not what it was like at all. History was built on the lives of millions of individual people. Not just Julius Caesar, but Caesar's cobbler, Caesar's cook, the orphaned child who watched him ride by from a back alley in Rome, the Chinese rice farmer thousands of miles away who lived at the exact same time but would never hear the general's name, someone's favorite grandma weaving baskets on the other side of the globe. All their lives were emotional, complicated, messy, and at times very beautiful. Humans, as far as we can tell, have always been, well, human. Every single one of them had that spark of humanity. They lived, they grew up, they loved, they hated, they told the truth, they lied, they could be cruel, they could be goofy and dorky, and above all else, they dreamed. Every time I see a human skull, and I do this quite a bit, I often wonder what types of dreams once swirled around within it. Believe me, humans have not changed much over several thousand years. I think that nothing illustrates this fact better than when you look at ancient graffiti in ancient cities like Pompeii. What archaeologists find is not the refined speech of playwrights or historians, but the common everyday gossip of the small folk, the countless nameless people that never get so much as a mention in the historical accounts. They offer a rare glance into the entirely ordinary and mundane life of the average person, filled with incredibly endearing dirty jokes that are somehow still relatable to a person reading them 2,000 years removed. In Pompeii, for example, you'll find quotes like this: "Weep, girls, my penis has given you up. Now it penetrates men's behinds. Implicatus, I know that Icarus is buggering you. Hehe, I screwed a lot of girls here. Cruel Lagos, why do you not love me?" Okay, these ones are pretty cute. If anyone does not believe in Venus, they should gaze at my girlfriend. "Hectus, baby, Mercator says hello." And of course, who could forget the famous, "We two dear men, friends forever, we were here. If you want to know our names, they were Gaius and Alus." Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that these two pros felt the need to eternalize their best broness forever? Oh, find yourself a person like that. These are all translated quotes that totally wouldn't be out of place on a modern-day social media platform if we just changed the names a little bit. Atop the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, runic inscriptions were discovered on a marble parapet. The inscription was 1,100 years old, and it was initially suspected that it served some kind of sacred religious importance. But a subsequent translation revealed that the writing reads as "Halfdan carved these runes," or simply "Halfdan was here." Historians determine that the engraving was made by a Viking named Halfdan, who was hired as a guard. Apparently, he grew tired of his guarding duties and decided to write his name on a nearby stone, only for us to rediscover centuries later. I don't think this will be a surprise at all, but this type of "I was here" graffiti is pretty much universal to all humans. The tomb of Ramses VI has a complaint on its walls written in ancient Greek, angrily proclaiming, "I visited and I did not like anything except the sarcophagus. Behold, the oldest Yelp review in history. Oh God, forgive the one who wrote this writing." This is an inscription that I wrote with my own hand. My hand will wear out, but the inscription will remain. I guess that aged really well. I could really go on and on talking about these examples forever, but there's one that really resonates with me in particular. Nestled along the shores of the river Volkhov, the city of Novgorod, Novgorod the Great, proudly stands as one of Russia's oldest cities. It is believed that Novgorod was initially founded sometime prior to the 800s AD to facilitate trade between the Greeks to the far south and the Varangians or Vikings to the far north. By the Middle Ages, the city's strategic position along this trade route allowed it to grow rich, both in wealth and in culture. In the 1950s, archaeological excavations of Novgorod discovered a treasure trove unlike any other. Not of gold or silver, but of documents. The thick and waterlogged clay soil had preserved tens of thousands of thin birch tree bark sheets. Prior to the mass production of paper, birchwood bark provided people in antiquity a cheap and easy alternative, wherever such trees were in ample supply. Novgorod was one such place. Using a metal or bone stylus, Novgorodians could inscribe letters and words into the abundant tree bark to record details of their everyday life. Over time, these documents created a lot of clutter, and eventually people would need to dispose of old and unwanted notes and rough drafts. This is exactly what occurred with the Novgorod treasure trove. Just like us, medieval Novgorodians during the 11th to 15th centuries threw away their useless bits of paper in a dump, not giving them as much as a second thought, and never knowing that scientists centuries later would marvel at their old garbage. Just like the graffiti at Pompeii, these amazingly preserved birch documents offer an unprecedented level of insight into the daily lives of medieval people. For one thing, they illustrate that a surprisingly high portion of the population appears to have been literate, at a time where having the ability to read and write was still pretty rare. Most of these documents were ledgers, monetary agreements, and transactions. However, others were personal letters. Several belonged to a female weaver named Nastasia. Sometime during the 1400s, her husband Boris asked her to send him his favorite set of shirts, which he evidently forgot to take with him on a lengthy journey. Rather sadly, we later learned that from another of Nastasia's letters, this time sent to her parents, that Boris has sadly died. We've got a love letter from Nikita to Yulanitsa. Marry me, I want you, and you want me. Our witness will be Ignato. But probably most fascinating of them all, we've got, I kid you not, a child's homework of all things. Amongst the many thousands of birchwood bark manuscripts, 17 items, all dating to the 13th century, appear to have been from a single individual. On many of these documents, he signed his name in a very distinctive hand, Anfim or Anfim. Anfim was
that's
a
how it's
Novgorodian boy, and judging from his handwriting, he was somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10 years old at the time. About 800 years ago, Anfim was writing out the old Novgorodian alphabet, practicing syllables, and learning verses of the Bible. His writings were almost definitely homework lessons and exercises given to him by his schoolteacher. However, Anfim didn't just write, he drew. 12 of the 17 pages
Just like what I
contained
did.
illustrations, doodled in the corners and margins. Anfim sketched dozens of small characters, medieval stick figures of perhaps himself, his friends, and
I love
maybe
it.
even his teacher or parents. We can tell that Anfim had a very active imagination. He was obsessed with scenes of battles and knightly valor. On the page, simply numbered by archaeologist 200, he had apparently begun to write out the first 11 letters of the alphabet, only to get bored and doodle an image of a man riding atop a horse, thundering down and
I love
slaying a
it.
foe with a long lance.
I've
Anfim
probably
curiously
done the
wrote out
same
his name
around
next to the
that
mounted
same
figure.
age.
It is possible that this was intended to be a label, and Anfim was in fact envisioning himself as the heroic warrior, hinting at his dream of someday becoming a knight. On the back of another one of his assignments, Anfim drew a fantastical creature with a long horse-like neck, cat-like pointed ears, and a curly tail. Round its neck, Anfim writes, "I am the wild beast." Again, suggesting the doodle is an imaginary self-portrait of sorts. The beastly Anfim either has a long forked tongue or is spewing fire like a dragon. The text box or speech bubble next to it says, "Greetings from Anfim to Daniel," a message perhaps intended for one of the boy's friends. Page number 203 depicts a character fighting an eldritch abomination of some kind, possibly a person on fire or with long shaggy hair, or a priest clutching a poisonous snake. Even archaeologists aren't quite sure. Above the chaotic scene, the young boy
I
writes,
love the effort.
"Lord, help your servant Anfim." Although these sketches might have angered his instructor, they reveal a lot of endearing and adorable details about Anfim. I'm reminded of my own middle school doodles, the bizarre aliens and dinosaurs I conjured up from my imagination
Those are more
while
like the
daydreaming
doodles I would
during a
draw
long
in elementary.
and somewhat boring day of classes. Whatever happened to Anfim? We will probably never know. As far as we can tell, all we have of this artistic genius are a few scraps of paper and nothing more. After that, he disappears from the Birchwood records in our limited view of history. Did he become a brave knight as he dreamed? Did he ever grow up and get married? Did he finally master his understanding of the alphabet? The date of Anfim's writings are somewhat unclear, as the archaeological methods have a certain degree of error. Some studies suggest they were made around the 1220s to 1230s AD, while other sources suggest a couple decades later, in the 1260s. The funny thing is that depending on the date you favor, Anfim might have grown up to fight in one of the craziest battles in military history, the Battle on the Ice, where the Prince of Novgorod, Alexander Nevsky, and his army defeated the evil order of the Teutonic Knights. The battle was literally fought on top of a frozen lake. Anfim could have been in his late teens or early 20s around that time. Is it possible that he might have served as a squire, or maybe even a knight in the conflict? Maybe. It is also possible that he was born after it. Whatever the case, we will likely never know. It is doubtful that Anfim had any clue that his drawings would be viewed by thousands many
No.
centuries after his
He
death,
would have had no idea.
bringing his creations to life using magic. There might be 20,000 more of these birchwood texts still buried under the Russian clay. Maybe we have not seen the last of this creative young kid. Stories like Anfim's makes me feel a very oddly specific and hard to describe emotion. Sonderer. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Every human that has existed on this planet had their own dreams and complex emotions. They were just like you and I, but most of them we will never get the chance to know. All the traces that ever were have disappeared, lost to us now. It is only through pieces of tree bark or scratches on the wall, a golden record, a handprint that these stories have been preserved, passed down to us over the vastness of time. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, never knowing their works would survive. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day.
Alright.
Easy to see your ESP, extra special person to me.
Nice, and he even includes all his sources used. It's pretty neat. Anyways, thank you for my first reaction request. I was a little surprised to actually get a request, considering I sort of disappeared for a little bit. But still grateful nonetheless. Thank you for that. I do like history videos. My only issue with them is I don't have much to add to them because, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really have any history education growing up. Aside from what they teach you in elementary and a little bit of middle school, and then in high school I got nothing. I learned no history throughout high school.